What is going on, everyone, and welcome to the channel. If it's your first time stopping in, please consider hitting that subscribe and bell notification button. I would greatly appreciate it. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you very much for your continued support. So today's video, as you can tell by the title, is I got a new bike. Now what we're going to do is cover, obviously here you see pictured is my 2014 Harley Davidson Night Rod Special. I do still have a couple of videos in queue for the Night Rod here, but just kind of a general recap. The only things really done to it so far, other than the custom seat, are the Bassani 2-in-1 exhaust, K&N factory replacement style air filter, and a Cobra auto tuner. Now we're going back in time a little bit with this video. So last spring, it'd be spring of 2022, I actually went and helped my buddy bring his bike into the dealership to get some work done. He needed a belt and he wanted to do fluid changes and all that stuff, some new lights, and used my Jeep. We put his, I think he's got a Fat Boy, like a mid-2000s Fat Boy. We loaded that up on the trailer, brought that into the local Harley Davidson dealership, and while he was dealing with service, I was just over there tootling around looking at the new bikes, and one in particular caught my eye just because I liked the color scheme of it. It's just a white, kind of like a pearlish white, and I didn't even know what kind of bike it was at the time because I had been kind of out of the loop as far as new Harleys go for a while. Obviously the Night Rod was a 2014 and this is 2022. I knew about the Milwaukee 8 and all that stuff, but I didn't really know about all the current models. Obviously I could tell it was a 114 cube Milwaukee 8 with the 6-speed transmission, but I wasn't sure the exact model it was. Well, of course, I stand there staring at it for no more than maybe 30 seconds and there's already a salesman walking up and he's, talking to me and, trying to make a sale or whatnot. And I have absolutely zero intention of getting a new bike or an additional bike because at this time I have the 2014 Night Rod Special and I also had 2017 Husqvarna 701, which I don't even ride that bike because I have to keep that at my storage unit a few miles from my house because I don't have enough space to keep it here in the garage. And it's just kind of a pain to ride there to switch out bikes. So I don't ride that bike enough. And I actually ended up selling the Husqvarna 701 a couple of months back. I absolutely loved that bike, but paying for two bikes and really not using it at all, I couldn't justify it. So I did sell that bike. So I'm down to the Night Rod Special. It's a 2014. It's only got like 5,000 miles on it, a little bit more, 5,500 maybe. And nothing wrong with it. Just got, basically stage 1 done to it minus a dyno tune. It just had the auto tuner and I still had a bunch of stuff and parts to go on it that I wanted to do to it, So we're just kind of talking about this bike and I come to find out it's a 2021. Remember, this is spring of 22, so it's a year old technically, but it's only got 120 miles on it, 125 miles on it for whatever reason. And I find out it's a Softail Street Bob. And I really liked kind of the bare bones look of it, along with kind of the sleekness and the nice big engine. Kind of reminded me of just a bigger version of the Sportster. For those of you that don't know, the bike that I came from before the Night Rod was a Nightster 1200. So this 1250 liquid cooled in the Night Rod, obviously a big step in performance from the Nightster. Which, by the way, I loved that Nightster 1200. It was a fun, great little bike. I just wanted something a little bit bigger and slight power bump, and that's kind of how I ended up with the Night Rod. But I am an impulse buyer, as you'll find out here soon. So I see a bike that I like, it looks cool, I like the specs of it, I see good reviews about it, I go out, test drive it, it's fun, I get it, then I kind of decide, well, maybe it wasn't the smartest deal. So at first, I told this guy, I'm basically trying to just tell him off. I'm like, hey man, there's no way I'm buying this bike today. I've got zero intention of buying a bike. I've already got this other bike. I still owe $7 grand on it. There's no way you're going to give me enough in trade-in on it. And, I still got stuff I want to do to it, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, you never know. Let me just, what do you got? And maybe we'll just run numbers and see, I'm like, whatever, suit yourself. So I told him year, make, model, mileage, all that stuff, what was done to it. And he goes and talks to like his service manager. And while he's gone, I'm kind of sitting there thinking, and I'm like, you know what? I'm trying to be honest with myself right here. I'm like, you know what? And this is the Night Rod I'm talking about here. I really love this bike. Super fun. I love the aesthetics of the fat rear tire. It's like a Batman bike. Beautiful looking bike. Love the performance. It's fast for a Harley, but it only is a 5-speed, and so it kind of screams going down the highway, which primarily when I ride, that's what I'm doing, is cruising. And also, it doesn't have the best cruising position. So even with my custom seat, you know, 1 to 2 hours riding, I'm looking to kind of pull over and rest my butt for a little bit. So I was thinking, I was like, you know what? I kind of want something that's a little bit more comfy of a cruiser and something that's possibly a little more two-up friendly. I want a 6th gear, but I don't want to shell out the money for a bagger, and I don't want to deal with the weight of a bagger. Nothing against a bagger, it's just not my style. So I'm like, you know, this bike could be potentially my all-in-one bike, because I can outfit it enough to be a comfortable single-person cruiser and occasional two-up rider without being a 1,000-pound bagger and costing me 20, 30 grand right out the gate just for the bike. So I purchased the Night Rod about 2 years ago. I had it for 2 years. I paid $10,000 or $10,500 for it. And then I did the air filter, the exhaust, and the tuner. So probably another like 2 grand or whatever. So I've got about 12,500 into it. And I put probably 1,000, 2,000 miles on it. Not very many miles in that amount of time, actually. And I owe 7 on it right now. And they come back at me and they're like, we'll give you 10 trade-in for it. And I was like, wow. Really? That's like basically what I paid for the thing 2,000 miles and 2 years ago, you know, minus my accessories that I put on, which obviously you always lose money there. And I guess the seat, which was about 600. So seat, exhaust, air filter, tuner, still all comes in right around just under 2 grand. Although I do still have a bunch of other parts that I have that never made it onto this bike that I'm going to have to try and sell and recuperate some money. But about $2,000 hit, but I did have it for 2 years, put 2,000 miles on it, and if they gave me 10, that gives me $3,000 equity since I only owe 7 on it, and that basically is a wash on all the parts that I put on it and purchased for it. So it'd basically be like I rented the bike for 2 years. So I really wouldn't be losing any money, or if I was, it wouldn't be very much. Now, I didn't instantly jump on this. I kind of sat there and chewed on it for a minute. I didn't even have him run my credit yet. And I don't know what was taking my buddy so damn long at service. I blame him, because there's no way it should have taken this long to write up a bike. I have no clue what he was doing, but so I'm kind of looking up specs on the Milwaukee 8, and I'm like, you know, because I don't want to be let down by a new bike, right? I don't want to have less performance than my current bike. So I had ridden a coworker's FXDR previously. For those of you that don't know, the FXDR also uses the 114 cubic inch with the 6-speed transmission. So same powertrain in this Street Bob, only it's got the fat tire and sits up a little bit higher. It's kind of the successor for the Night Rod, but it doesn't even feel the same because completely different powertrain. The RPM curve and rev range is completely different. They kind of look similar, but very different bikes. So I rode my coworkers once upon a time, and I thought it was like reasonably fun for what it was, even though it was less RPMs than the Night Rod. And if you compare the specs on paper, the horsepower and torque of the Night Rod versus the Milwaukee 8 114, you basically flip the numbers. The Milwaukee 8 has about the same torque as the Night Rod had horsepower, and the Night Rod had the same torque as the Milwaukee 8 has horsepower. The Night Rod, the FXDR, and the Street Bob are all pretty much within the same weight range as well, somewhere between the 650 to 680 pound weight range. So you're probably asking yourself, okay, Tony, well, if you like the look of the Night Rod and you want the 6th gear, why don't you just get an FXDR? Which is a legit question and something that I had thought about before. Here's the problem, though. Another thing pushing me towards trading in the Night Rod is the fact that they don't make them anymore. They quit making the Night Rod in 2017. Therefore, parts are getting harder to find, and while they are out there, they're not exactly cheap, and it's only a matter of time until they get harder and harder and harder to find, and more and more and more expensive. And even though I didn't have the Night Rod for a very long time or that many miles, I had kind of had my fun with it, even though I had future plans to do more with it. But I didn't want to get stuck with this bike and not be happy with it and put more money into it if I'm not going to be happy with it, and then be stuck with it when it's kind of obsolete and harder to find parts and everything. So the very same problem is present with the FXDR. I believe 2020 or 2021 was the last year for that bike. They gave that one the axe as well. So I didn't want to buy a bike that's basically dead on arrival and already not going to be supported in a few short years. So that's kind of why the FXDR was out. I could have went with the Fat Bob or the Lowrider S, but both of those options are several $1,000s more than a Street Bob, and this Street Bob, since it was used with 120 some miles on it, was not subject to the setup fee and any of that junk. If you look on the MSRP website for Harley and it says that the Street Bob starts at $16,000, you got to add the $500 for the ABS, and then $500 for the setup and prep, and then all the tax. You're going to end up paying almost 20 grand for a $16,000 bike out the door, all said and done with your loan once you factor in interest and stuff. And so if I would have went with the Fat Bob or a Lowrider S, this would have easily been over $20,000 for the bike. And no matter what, I'm going to change some things with the bike. So even if I spent that extra coin, I would still be messing with the bike and spending more money to modify it. Plus, this bike here is kind of what drew me in. I liked the look of it and the style of it, and so this is the one I really wanted to hone in on if I was going to get one. Just for giggles, as I'm making this video, I pulled up the Harley website here for a 2023 Fat Bob or Lowrider S. They're both about the same price, but for a Fat Bob, the base price is $18,900. Then any color besides Vivid Black adds another $500. So now we're up to $19,500 plus almost $1,000 for ABS, $200 for California emissions. Thanks, California, even though I don't live there. $700 for freight, $750 for surcharge. Plus, you got to have your sales tax, along with any sort of extended warranty that you're going to purchase, and any sort of interest accrued from the loan you're going to get. So a new Lowrider S or a new Fat Bob would be $22,000 MSRP just for the bike. Once you factor in my state sales tax, it would be $23,500 plus an extended warranty if I want to get that. So we're talking about a $25,000 bike, which easily puts me in beggar range. This Street Bob, I skip all those fees minus my state sales tax. The only thing that doesn't come with that the other two bikes would have is cruise control, which I can add for $500. So Impulse Tony said, screw it, what better time than now?
What better place than here? What better time than now?
They're giving me a good trade-in price. I went ahead, I pulled the trigger on the bike. I can't remember the exact cost of the bike. It was $15,000 something, I believe. Again, 2021 Street Bob 114 with 140 miles on it, 120, somewhere in there. I also purchased an extended warranty. I believe it was 2 or 3 years. So with the extended warranty, with my sales tax in this state, with the cost of the bike, the final loan amount ended up being $17,500, which was a full $6,000 less than a Lowrider S or a Fat Bob out the door. So if I play my cards right, which should be no problem with $6 grand, I should be able to do a full stage 2 with supporting mods and all the cosmetic mods I want to do with this bike and still be under the cost of a Fat Bob or a Lowrider S, just the bike alone out the door. And funny enough, despite the larger engine, the Street Bob actually gets about 5 mpg better than the Night Rod, which is actually a factor given the fact that the cost of gas at the time was about $4, $4.50 a gallon. And guys, I want to give a shout out to a couple of YouTubers that you should follow if you have a Milwaukee 8, especially a 114 or a Street Bob. 2 of the guys are working on trying to get to that 1,000 subscriber mark, so go show them some love. I'll post all these guys down in the video description with their channel. So first is Tim Finning from Australia. I believe he's from the Perth area of Australia, Western Australia. He's got a 114 and I believe a Kawasaki of some sort. He kind of goes through a couple bikes here and there, but he's got a very nice, tasteful Street Bob 114 that he's got done. I'm definitely going to copy a couple of his modifications. He does kind of some riding vlog and walk around videos, mods of his bikes, so go check him out. The next is Easy Rider Greg. He also does mainly Harley vlogs, just some nice riding around videos and moto vlogs there. And third but not least is going to be Tommy Miller, who is also over in Australia, I believe. He's been super helpful. He replied to a bunch of my questions about some 114 builds. He's got a lot of cool builds on his page as well as on his Instagram. So again, go check out and subscribe to all three of these guys. They've all got Harley related content and they're fun to watch. So go ahead and get those guys to that 1,000 sub mark. Tommy's already there, but he definitely needs more recognition. I've watched a lot of his videos, like I said, and he seems to really know his stuff, and he's given some very good insight and good knowledge. So definitely going to be utilizing all that stuff that I've learned from those guys and products that they've used to go ahead and build this platform, and I'm excited to do that. So as you can see here, the new Street Bob awaiting delivery, and here they are with their truck and trailer dropping it off. You can see the night rod is up there, nestled away in the trailer, saying goodbye to it. Again, a fantastic bike, really loved it, no complaints with it, had no problems at the time. I just felt like it was the right move at the right time, and that's why we ended up doing this. So I'm looking forward to building this up, like I said, into kind of like a stage 2 do it all bike. It's not going to be full-blown bagger status, but I'm probably going to add something like a quarter fairing and then like a swing arm bag and a handlebar bag, you know, a little bit of storage here and there, but not full-on hard bags or anything like that. Nothing crazy, no speakers or anything. Might add some air ride to the rear, and definitely going to do a cam and stuff. And again, you're probably wondering, well, why did you get a warranty if you're going to do a cam? Well, the warranty is bumper to bumper. It's not just for the engine, and at the time I didn't think I was going to tear into the engine, maybe just do like a stage 1, but then after doing some research and figuring out just how much power these M8s gain from doing a cam, that's when I decided I was going to do it, because it's way better bang for the buck than doing like a 131 or the new 135 drop-in motor. But I have terrible luck. They call me BLT, Bad Luck Tony, and you'll see why here. Right after they delivered it here, I took it for a test drive, even though it was still pretty cold out for the year. I took it out for a little test drive just around the block, because how can you not? And then I parked it, and a few days later, a buddy of mine that recently picked up like a 2019 Indian came over, and we were going to go for a ride, and this is what happened. So, Bad Luck Tony already rode new bike once around the block, was perfectly fine. It literally has 140 miles on it. Dakota shows up. We're going to go on a ride, fire it up, go to take off, no throttle response, and the engine light's on. So I shut it off, restart it, still the same problem. Cool. Really glad fly-by-wire is a thing. Never had that problem with a cable. And then I go to try and like look up, you know, the limp mode and see if there's any way around it, if I can fix it on my own or if it's got to go to the dealer. And I go to try to start it again just to see if I can literally limp it to the dealer. And now it doesn't even start.
Just double check your neutral.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Bad Luck Tony. So yeah, new to me bike, had it for less than 5 miles, having problems already, typical Bad Luck Tony. Of course, I was drinking the night before, and although I was not drunk, obviously, when I was trying to ride, I must have been hungover, because I was just like dying, trying to get this thing going. We were pushing it, trying to dump the clutch to get it going. It was not starting. It was like something telling it not to start. And then in a last act of desperation, I hit the starter switch one more time. It fired up. I looked at my buddy. I grabbed the throttle, twist it. It's got RPM. I'm like, let's go. Dealership closes in 10 minutes. It's 5 miles away. We haul ass over there, and I drop it off. Got her dropped off at service. Somehow it started and limped her to Harley. Now we're gonna double noodle back on Dakota's Indian. Hope it don't fall off the back. So obviously a big disappointment, you know, spending this kind of money on a bike that you weren't even intending on buying, that you kind of got talked into buying. Even though you like the bike and you want to like the bike, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Not to mention, maybe kind of hard to tell by this picture here, but you can tell by my tire alignment that the rear fender is actually pretty crooked. The fender gap is much larger on the right side of the tire. You can see the reflector is not centered over the tire. And I brought this up when I dropped the bike off for the throttle issue, and they kind of basically told me, oh, they all are like that. There's nothing we can do about it. And so that kind of upset me even more, but I was just flustered by the whole situation and didn't even want to deal with it. I was like, whatever, just look at the engine light, figure it out. I called them after a few days. They hadn't looked at it because it was too cold to test ride the bike. Call them again a few more days later. They finally look at it. For whatever reason, the tech that scanned it didn't even print out codes because they couldn't tell me what the code was, but they just cleared the code out, checked the connectors, and then test drove it when the weather got warmer, and apparently never had a problem and couldn't duplicate the issue, so they told me to pick it up. So once again, unsettling. They didn't find any for sure fix. I feel disappointed in the purchase. I traded in a bike that had zero issues to my knowledge. And so I sat there sulking with the fact in the back of my head that that throttle's probably going to act up and leave me stranded somewhere. My OCD's bothering me because the stupid rear fender is crooked. They don't seem willing to help me fix it or anything like that. But I just want to enjoy the bike that I purchased, so they drop it back off, and I end up riding it for the majority of the season here, just trying to put some miles on and familiarize myself with the bike, and just ride with my buddies and see if I can get this thing to act up at all. We out here. Hey, dude.
Just come back.
There it is. So it was all pretty smooth sailing with the exception of that stupid crooked fender. I never was able to get the throttle to act up on me again. The whole rest of the season, everything was going pretty good until the very last ride of the season. We got a freakishly warm day in October. I rode the bike to work. Me and a coworker went to lunch. We both rode our bikes, and he pointed this out to me on the way back. Typical bad luck Tony. In addition to my basically brand new bike that hardly has any miles on it with a crooked fender that Harley says they can't do anything about because that's just how they're made, which is pretty pathetic for a, $17,000 bike, but cool. I'm moving on from that. Go on lunch, buddy from work, and he's like, hey, your exhaust is flopping around. Saw it when you hit the train track. Both bolts missing right there. And the clamp right here is conveniently digging into my goddamn frame right there, so that's cool. 800 miles on the bike. So if you couldn't tell by that last clip, I was pretty upset, and I think rightfully so. The bike had like 800 or 900 miles on it. It wasn't even due for the 1,000 mile service yet, where they go and re-torque everything, so they couldn't even use the excuse that I was neglecting the maintenance or anything like that. So I brought it back to them yet again, and brought up the fender yet again, but I was determined this time, and thank God, because one of the service advisors and the service manager basically said they couldn't do anything, but one service advisor called me over and was willing to help me out, and he understood the situation and was like, nah man, yeah, that should be fixed, blah blah blah. So long story short, they got the bike. They ordered a new bracket where that exhaust clamp rubbed into it and wore through the paint. So they installed a new painted factory Harley bracket. They installed the two missing Allen bolts that hold the two exhaust pipes together. And while it was there, I just went ahead and bit the bullet, had them do the 1,000 mile service. That way there's no arguments, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If there's any future issues with stuff falling off and getting loose or anything like that, I want to be covered, just because I have not had good luck with this thing so far. And they couldn't tell me exactly what was wrong, but they took the fender like off or apart and then put it back together, and some way, somehow, it looks way better now. It's probably not perfect, but way better. And come to find out, when I called back to go pick the bike up, the service advisor that like actually helped me and was willing to help me and get things fixed right, he, for whatever reason, didn't work with them anymore by the time the bike was finished. So I'm really glad that I got to work with him, whoever he was, before he exited that dealership, because otherwise I probably still wouldn't have this fender fixed. But here's what we're looking at now. Well, I can't tell because of course it's on the kickstand and it's probably still not perfect, but the fender's a hell of a lot better than what it was, that's for sure. So appreciates that. And did the 1,000-mile service, got me new bolts in there and new bracket back here that this clamp dug into. All better. And so that's pretty much where the bike sits now. It's currently March, and here in Minnesota we still have snow on the ground. I won't be riding until at least the end of April. I'm making a separate video, but the first modification is installed on the bike. Actually, the first 2 modifications, so be sure to stay tuned and check out that video. Sorry this video got so long, guys. I just wanted to kind of give the Night Rod its due respect because it was a really nice bike. I wanted to thoroughly explain my reasoning for everything, as well as go over the problems I've had with the Street Bob so far. Again, make sure to check out those 3 guys, Tim Finning, Easy Rider Greg, and Tommy Miller, aka Master Tech Miller. I will still have 2 or 3 more Night Rod related videos coming out, and stay tuned for more Street Bob videos to follow. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you hit that like button, comment down below with any questions. Check out my other videos here on YouTube. Check me out on all my socials, and as always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.